On today's episode of Shedlife, we're comparing Shed versus Superstar. So I want to compare my humble shed of a Civic to the legend that is the JDM EP3. We're going to talk about looks to start with, and I think we can all agree the JDM EP3 wins in this department. However, the Shed does look a lot better in red or black. So we're going to take you around the car so you can have a good look of each one. Our next section is the 3 Ps, which is price, power and performance. So let's cover those very quickly. Jack's car cost £9,000 and he's done a few modifications to it, which are as follows: spoon brake calipers, Fujitsu Bow exhaust, Tegawa carbon intake, and lastly a Pioneer head unit and speaker setup. And this adds up to £3,500. My humble shed cost £500 and the only modification I've made to it is putting a King's X CD in the CD player. Let's talk about power. Here we have the legend that is the Honda K20. It previously had a Mugen air intake and we've swapped that over to the Tegawa carbon intake, and the noise on VTEC crossover is absolutely incredible. We believe this to be making around 220 horsepower. Moving over to the Shed, and we have the D14 1.4, which is making 90 horsepower. Now, unlike the K20, this does not have VTEC, so I think this is a solid win for the Civic Type R. Let's talk about the performance. As mentioned, the Civic Type R makes 220 horsepower. This gives it a 0 to 60 of around 6.2 seconds. And if you care, it gets about 31.7 miles per gallon. Now, let's have a look at the Shed. The Shed makes 90 buff horses, and this gets it to 60 in 11.6 seconds. As it's so slow, it achieves 44.1 miles per gallon, so we're definitely winning on the economy side. We're now going to compare the practicality and see what features this has, which this doesn't have, and vice versa. Starting with the obvious, the Type R has 2 doors and the Shed has 4. This means you can get your passengers in and out very easily and throw your stuff in the back seats without having to tilt your seat up. Now if we head round the back, both cars have a very similar boot space. I can't find a difference, they're both Civics. Now let's head back inside. The Shed has these boring old bus seats, they're very comfortable and there's nothing interesting whatsoever about them, whereas we jump over to the Type R, we have these amazing red Recaros. So on that note, I think we should go for a drive. As you can see, I'm now in the Civic Type R, and there's only 2 things I'd like to talk about. The first being these lovely red Recaros. Now the seats are obviously wildly different in this and the Shed. The Recaros support you very well in the lower bolster and the upper bolster. They hold you in going round corners and they're fairly comfortable. I mean, for a race seat, I was a bit apprehensive and thought they'd be fairly uncomfortable. They're not as comfortable as the Shed, I will say that, but I can imagine these are fine for long journeys and especially good on track days. Now the second thing I'd like to talk about is the handling. Now I believe both cars have electric steering, and when I first drove this I wasn't initially impressed coming from BMWs which have hydraulic steering, and I just didn't feel I got that connection with the front wheels. Driving it now, I'm having absolutely no problems, so I'm wondering what my apprehensions were with this, and I hear with a fast road setup they drive and handle very well. So those are my 2 issues I wanted to cover with you and let you know about. You've seen the performance stats, so now we're going to move over to the Flybys and we're going to get some of that lovely VTEC noise and enjoy the sound of both of these cars. overall, we've covered several aspects, and I think we can all agree as petrol heads, the JDM EP3 is the one to have. Now, if you've only got 500 quid, the Shed definitely wins. There are better options for going against this, which would probably be the EP2, but this is what I have, and for 500 quid, I can't complain. And if I was going to move on to a better version of this car, it would be the EP3 Civic. So thanks for watching, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.